just learning what other women journalists are going through in the other parts of the world, that was very important and very striking for me. Just some of the challenges that other women are going through. And as I said, in Kenya, it's not something that has been extensively discussed. It's not documented. And it's something I think I have to take back. So unfortunately, we are not getting corruption stories from a female lens, because most of the people reporting on it are males. And it's a very sensitive topic. And because it's very sensitive, naturally you find that women will shy away from it because they're thinking of the retaliation that will follow if they come out or break, say, a corruption scandal. Because it's not just the members of some members of the public may come out against them, but also we have cases where some of the people adversely mentioned in those stories, like politicians or powerful people, who actually get bloggers to start trends or hashtags against people who, report corruption stories where they're adversely implicated. So these are some of the fears that women have, because they think, oh, if I report that kind of story, I will be attacked in that way. So naturally, they're holding back.
Yes, I do. It's good to share and share the experiences, as well as share the solutions. Because if we have the same trends and we see the same patterns, then we can provide probably a more collaborative effort to find the solutions, and it will be good to complement the different strategies that has been going on with the different countries or the different regions, and put that together and really work on a solution. Because how can we really find change if we're not going to do anything and just talk about it? It's good to coordinate and see where we can take the things that we have been doing for the past years.
It was very inspiring to hear how they tackle harassment against women journalists in other countries. It was very powerful to hear that sometimes you need to face these harassment instead of hiding or deactivating your social account or changing professions. So I think it's important to have sort of a global national action plan, because as a women journalist worked in Saudi Arabia, there is a sense of loneliness at the moment. We women feel that they are forgotten. There are other interests that are taking place than their cause, their problems and their issues. And I think it's important to not compromise over the safety of women journalists and gender equality question. This should come first before money. Well, it's plenty. You face lots of harassment that actually can cause a psychological damage. It makes you sometimes need a counseling, and then there are challenges of when you live in an authoritarian regime. They spend a lot of money in surveillance. So even if you choose to be anonymous, there is a risk that your identity could be revealed and you'll end up in harm. I realized that working online, it's much more harsh than actually offline, because at the end of the day, you could you could just throw the threat letters that comes to you, but when you have a notification popping on your phone all the time, it's unavoidable. And then when they also send you text messages, it increases the level of threat. Well, I really wish that this center would have existed when I was inside the country, because when I start feeling unsafe, I didn't know where to turn, where to get advice. So I think it's important to have sort of international center where a woman journalist in facing threat of security could call or communicate and get advice of what is the next step, and also identify scenarios of how to deal with the situation. It would have actually saved me a lot of trouble.
think that you can't help but be inspired by all these people who are doing their jobs on a daily basis despite all these threats, which are in some cases very horrific and much greater danger than what we have experienced maybe. And I think that that's my biggest takeout. The similarity of the cases is quite striking, even though the degree might differ. So it's truly an international problem with perhaps specific dimensions in different countries. Okay, well, if you talk from our perspective, what we have needed is psychological rehabilitation. We have needed perhaps legal support, but we can find that in country. And we have needed a safe house because in Ukraine we had a precedent last year when in November 3 journalists were evacuated out of the country for security reasons by their newsrooms. 2 of those were journalists, female journalists rather. So I think that this case demonstrates the need for such a facility. Also, there is a universal sort of lack of resources for a proper response. Responses have been discussed in the sense of, fight or flight. Some people are fighting online against the trolls. Others just self-censor and stop commenting or posting anything. Part of the reason why I don't reply to trolls, for example, is I just don't have the time. And same with the rest of my newsroom, because apart from doing this, we have to have a day job. We have to actually get on with our stuff. And the resources, the shortage of resources is not just about that. Like if you're going to put up a legal case against somebody or something, or a phenomenon or an individual, you have to have a lot of time and you have to have the legal resources to handle the case. If you're going to evacuate a journalist, you have to provide them with some livelihood. You have to make sure that you can pay for some place for them to stay. And not all the newsrooms can afford that. There are some international programs that have the capacity to support that kind of emergency evacuation, but they're few and rare, and they still take a long time. They still take months to process. And another risk is that when you go into social media and make that one of your platforms, we have seen time and again that algorithms shape the way people see your information. And basically, you can create a platform, you can invest a lot of time and money into resources, into training, into hiring people to produce specific videos in specific formats for Facebook, Twitter, whatever. And then overnight, Facebook changes the algorithm, and you end up with half the engagement and half the readership and half the eyes for your information. And that is something that is beyond your control. When you were in the US, you can maybe take that up with social media platforms and the owners and the stockholders, whatever, because and the regulators, of course, as we're seeing now in the case of Facebook. But when you were elsewhere, when you were in Saudi Arabia or the Philippines or Kenya or Ukraine, that's not an option. A lot of the time, they will not talk to you, and even the support, which can be located anywhere from Dublin to you name it, might not even get back to you on your problem. So that's a big issue as well.